Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a full patch for newly discovered critical vulnerability will incur significant downtime and require extensive retesting of core business applications, potentially delaying critical product releases. However, the vulnerability, if exploited, could lead to a widespread data breach affecting customer PII. What is the most appropriate course of action for the security administrator? Option A. Delay patching until the next scheduled maintenance window to avoid any disruption to product releases, as the exploit is not yet publicly known. Option B. Escalate the issue to senior management and request a complete halt of all business operations until the patch can be fully implemented and tested. Option C. Immediately deploy the patch without regard for downtime or retesting, prioritizing absolute security over business operations. Option D. Implement a temporary, compensating control that significantly reduces the exploitability of the vulnerability, while a planned, less disruptive patching and retesting schedule is developed and executed. The correct answer is D. Implement a temporary, compensating control that significantly reduces the exploitability of the vulnerability, while a planned, less disruptive patching and retesting schedule is developed and executed. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity administration, balancing security needs with operational realities and resource constraints. The administrator must determine the most effective and compliant method for addressing a newly identified vulnerability. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the potential impact of the vulnerability, the cost of mitigation, and the regulatory implications of inaction or inadequate response. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that considers not only the technical severity of the vulnerability, but also its potential business and regulatory consequences. This aligns with best practices for risk management and demonstrates due diligence. By prioritizing remediation based on a comprehensive understanding of potential harm, the administrator ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical threats first. This proactive and informed approach is crucial for maintaining compliance with security standards and protecting sensitive data, which is a fundamental requirement for any organization operating within the scope of Check Point's operational environment. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the vulnerability due to perceived low immediate impact, or to implement a solution without fully understanding its implications. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance, as many frameworks mandate timely and effective vulnerability management. For instance, failing to address a vulnerability that could lead to a data breach could result in significant fines and reputational damage, violating principles of data protection and responsible security stewardship. Another incorrect approach might be to implement a costly, overly complex solution that does not directly address the root cause or is disproportionate to the actual risk, leading to wasted resources and potentially introducing new security weaknesses. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with identifying and understanding the threat. This is followed by an assessment of the potential impact, considering technical, business, and regulatory factors. Based on this assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies are evaluated, taking into account cost, effectiveness, and operational feasibility. Finally, the chosen strategy is implemented and monitored, with ongoing review to ensure continued effectiveness and compliance. This systematic approach ensures that security decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 2. Research into the security logs of a Check Point security gateway R81 20 reveals a significant volume of outbound traffic from a user segment to an external IP address on a non-standard port. The traffic is not explicitly defined in the current access control policy. The administrator needs to determine the appropriate action to take to ensure security without disrupting critical business operations. Option A. Lock all outbound traffic from the user segment to any external IP address on non-standard ports by default, as this is a common security best practice. Option B. Analyze the traffic logs to identify the application and protocol associated with the traffic. Consult with the relevant business unit to ascertain its legitimacy and business criticality, and then create a specific rule in the access control policy to permit or deny it based on the findings. Option C. Rely solely on the Check Point threat prevention documentation to classify the traffic and create a rule based on generic recommendations without further investigation into the specific business context. Option D. Immediately create a broad exception rule in the access control policy to allow all traffic from the user segment to the external IP address on the non-standard port to avoid any potential business disruption. The correct answer is B. Analyze the traffic logs to identify the application and protocol associated with the traffic. Consult with the relevant business unit to ascertain its legitimacy and business criticality, and then create a specific rule in the access control policy to permit or deny it based on the findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a business. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying security policies in a dynamic environment where new applications and services are constantly being introduced. The administrator must make a judgment call that upholds the organization's security posture while minimizing disruption to legitimate business functions. This requires a deep understanding of the checkpoint security gateway's capabilities, the organization's security policy, and the potential risks associated with different traffic flows. The correct approach involves a systematic and risk-based methodology. It prioritizes understanding the nature of the traffic and its business criticality before making a decision. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the risk and do not unnecessarily impede operations. Specifically, leveraging the security gateway's logging and reporting features to analyze the traffic's characteristics, source, destination, port, protocol, application, and then consulting with the relevant business unit to determine its legitimacy and importance is crucial. This data-driven and collaborative approach ensures that decisions are informed and defensible. An incorrect approach would be to blindly block all traffic that is not explicitly permitted by a default deny policy without further investigation. This is professionally unacceptable because it can lead to significant business disruption and may not be the most effective security measure. It fails to acknowledge that many legitimate business applications utilize non-standard ports or protocols, and a blanket block could cripple essential services. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to consider the impact on the organization's operations. Another incorrect approach is to immediately create a broad exception for any traffic flagged by the security gateway, especially if it's a new or unknown application. This bypasses the risk assessment process and can introduce significant vulnerabilities. It represents a failure to adhere to the principle of least privilege and can lead to the unauthorized access or exfiltration of sensitive data. Professionally, this demonstrates a lack of understanding of the potential attack vectors and a disregard for established security protocols. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor documentation or generic best practices for classifying the traffic, without considering the specific context of the organization's environment and business needs. While vendor documentation is valuable, it cannot account for unique configurations or specific business requirements. This approach can lead to misclassification of traffic, either by allowing potentially malicious traffic or by blocking legitimate business operations. It lacks the critical element of organizational context, which is essential for effective security policy enforcement. The professional decision-making process should involve a clear understanding of the organization's security policy, a thorough analysis of network traffic using available tools, consultation with stakeholders, e.g., application owners, business unit managers, and a risk-based approach to policy enforcement. When faced with unknown traffic, the default action should be to investigate and understand, rather than to immediately permit or deny without sufficient information. Question 3. Market research demonstrates that a growing number of employees are requesting access to cloud-based collaboration tools that are not currently on the organization's approved application list. The IT security team is concerned about potential data leakage and the introduction of malware. As a checkpoint certified security administrator for R81. 20. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this situation while maintaining a strong security posture and adhering to best practices? Option A. Instruct employees to use personal devices for accessing these new collaboration tools to keep them separate from the corporate network. Option B. Grant temporary access to all requested cloud applications to avoid disrupting employee productivity with the intention of reviewing them at a later date. Option C. Immediately block all access to any cloud-based collaboration tools not explicitly listed in the current security policy to prevent any potential security risks. Option D. Utilize the Checkpoint Security Gateway's application control and URL filtering blades to identify and categorize the requested cloud applications. Conduct a risk assessment for each application, considering factors like data sensitivity and vendor security practices. Based on the assessment, create specific security policies to allow or deny access, or to enforce specific security controls, e.g., content inspection, data loss prevention for approved applications, documenting all decisions and changes. The correct answer is D. Utilize the Checkpoint Security Gateway's application control and URL filtering blades to identify and categorize the requested cloud applications. Conduct a risk assessment for each application, considering factors like data sensitivity and vendor security practices. Based on the assessment, create specific security policies to allow or deny access, or to enforce specific security controls, e.g., content inspection, data loss prevention for approved applications, documenting all decisions and changes. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a business. The core difficulty lies in interpreting and applying security policies in a dynamic environment where user needs and evolving threats constantly interact. Careful judgment is required to ensure that security measures are effective without unduly hindering legitimate business activities, and to do so in a manner that aligns with the specific regulatory framework governing the organization. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of risk assessment and policy enforcement, directly referencing the Checkpoint Security Gateway R81 20 functionalities. This approach is best professional practice because it ensures that security decisions are not arbitrary, but are based on a thorough understanding of potential threats, the effectiveness of implemented controls, and compliance with established security policies. Specifically, leveraging security gateway features like application control and URL filtering, coupled with a clear change management process for policy exceptions, demonstrates a proactive and responsible security posture. This aligns with the principles of maintaining confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets, which are foundational to most regulatory frameworks, including those implicitly referenced by the CCSA certification. Incorrect approaches fail to meet professional standards due to several regulatory and ethical shortcomings. Implementing a blanket block on all new applications without proper vetting ignores the potential for legitimate business use and can lead to operational disruption, which indirectly impacts compliance by hindering business processes that may be subject to regulatory oversight. Furthermore, allowing exceptions without a documented review process or without considering the security implications of those exceptions creates vulnerabilities and undermines the integrity of the security policy. This lack of due diligence can expose the organization to data breaches or noncompliance with data protection regulations, as the security posture is weakened by ad hoc decisions. Failing to consult with the security policy and not documenting the rationale for any changes or exceptions represents a failure in accountability and transparency, which are critical ethical and often regulatory requirements. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the business need. Clearly define why a new application or service is required. 2. Assessing the risk. Evaluate the potential security threats associated with the proposed application or service. 3. Consulting policy. Review existing security policies and guidelines to determine if they address the situation. 4. Leveraging security tools. Utilize the capabilities of the Checkpoint Security Gateway, e.g., application control, URL filtering, IPS, to enforce security policies and mitigate risks. 5. Documenting decisions. Maintain a clear record of all policy changes, exceptions, and the rationale behind them. 6. Communicating changes. Inform relevant stakeholders about any implemented security measures or policy adjustments. Question 4. Risk assessment procedures indicate a high-severity alert from the Intrusion Prevention System, IPS, regarding potential command and control, C2 traffic originating from an internal workstation. The alert specifies a suspicious outbound connection to an unknown IP address. The security administrator needs to respond effectively while minimizing disruption to critical business operations that rely on this workstation and its associated network segment. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Disable all inbound and outbound traffic on the affected network segment until the threat can be fully investigated. Option B. Analyze the IPS logs and network traffic flow data associated with the alert to identify the specific nature and destination of the suspicious traffic, and then implement targeted firewall rules or IPS exceptions to block only the identified malicious connection. Option C. Ignore the alert and continue normal operations, as it may be a false positive. Option D. Immediately implement a broad, restrictive access control policy across all critical servers to prevent any unauthorized access, assuming a widespread compromise. The correct answer is B. Analyze the IPS logs and network traffic flow data associated with the alert to identify the specific nature and destination of the suspicious traffic, and then implement targeted firewall rules or IPS exceptions to block only the identified malicious connection. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of a dynamic business environment. The core difficulty lies in the potential for security policies, particularly those related to access control and threat prevention, to inadvertently disrupt legitimate business operations. The administrator must navigate the complexities of identifying and mitigating threats without causing undue operational friction, a task that requires a deep understanding of both security principles and the organization's specific business context. Pressure to respond quickly to a perceived threat while also ensuring minimal business impact adds a layer of professional challenge. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic, evidence-based response that prioritizes understanding the actual threat before implementing broad, potentially disruptive countermeasures. This aligns with best practices in incident response and security management, which advocate for a phased approach: detection, analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. By first analyzing the logs and traffic patterns, the administrator can accurately identify the nature and scope of the threat. This allows for the implementation of targeted security policies, such as specific firewall rules or IPS signatures, that address the identified threat directly without impacting unrelated network traffic. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of false positives and avoids unnecessary disruption to business operations, thereby upholding the principle of least privilege and ensuring operational continuity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, restrictive access control policy across all critical servers without specific evidence of a threat is a premature and potentially damaging action. This approach fails to adhere to the principle of proportionality in security responses. It risks blocking legitimate user access and disrupting essential business services, leading to significant operational downtime and financial losses. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due diligence in threat assessment and a disregard for the impact on business operations. Disabling all inbound and outbound traffic on the affected network segment is an overly aggressive containment strategy. While it might effectively stop a perceived threat, it is a blunt instrument that will almost certainly cripple business operations within that segment. This approach lacks the necessary analysis to determine if such drastic measures are warranted and fails to consider less disruptive alternatives. It demonstrates a lack of nuanced understanding of incident response and a disregard for business continuity. Ignoring the alert and continuing normal operations is a direct failure to address a potential security incident. This approach demonstrates negligence and a disregard for the organization's security posture. It exposes the organization to significant risk of data breach, system compromise, or operational disruption if the alert represents a genuine threat. Ethically and professionally, this is unacceptable as it prioritizes convenience over security responsibility. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework. This involves 1. Verification, confirming the validity of the alert through log analysis and traffic monitoring. 2. Triage, assessing the severity and potential impact of the confirmed threat. 3. Containment, implementing targeted measures to limit the threat's spread. 4. Eradication, removing the threat from the environment. 5. recovery, restoring affected systems and services. This process ensures that security actions are proportionate, effective, and minimize disruption to legitimate business functions. Question 5. Which approach would be most effective for a checkpoint security administrator managing a new critical business application on R81? 20. Aiming to implement robust security without disrupting legitimate user access and ensuring compliance with internal security policies. Option A. Implement a broad, allow all rule for the application's traffic initially, then gradually tighten rules based on observed suspicious activity and user complaints. Option B. Analyze the application's communication patterns and requirements, consult with application owners, and then configure granular security policies on the security gateway to permit only necessary traffic and protocols. Option C. Apply a generic security policy template designed for similar applications, assuming it will adequately protect the new critical business application. Option D. Block all inbound traffic to the application by default and require users to submit formal requests for specific access, which will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Correct answer is A. Implement a broad, allow all rule for the application's traffic initially, then gradually tighten rules based on observed suspicious activity and user complaints. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a business. The core tension lies in implementing security controls that might inadvertently disrupt legitimate business processes. The professional challenge is to identify and implement security measures that are effective without causing undue operational friction, ensuring compliance with security policies, and potentially regulatory mandates related to data protection and availability. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology. It involves understanding the specific security requirements of the application, assessing the potential risks of various configurations, and then selecting the most appropriate security policy that aligns with both security objectives and business needs. This proactive engagement with application owners and a thorough understanding of the checkpoint security gateway's capabilities, particularly in R81. 20. Ensures that security is integrated rather than imposed. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, while also considering the operational impact, which is a key aspect of effective security administration. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on blocking all traffic without understanding the application's needs is professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to engage with stakeholders, potentially leading to significant business disruption and a perception of security as an impediment rather than an enabler. Such an approach could violate implicit or explicit service level agreements and fail to meet the organization's overall objectives. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing a broad, overly permissive policy without proper analysis is also professionally deficient. While it might avoid immediate disruption, it creates significant security vulnerabilities. This approach fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege and increases the attack surface, potentially leading to security incidents that could have regulatory implications if sensitive data is compromised. It also demonstrates a lack of understanding of the security gateway's granular control capabilities. Third incorrect approach that relies on guesswork or anecdotal evidence rather than a structured analysis of traffic and security requirements is unprofessional. This approach is inherently risky, as it is not based on data or a clear understanding of the threat landscape or the application's behavior. It can lead to either overblocking or underblocking, both of which have negative consequences. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the business context and application requirements. 2. Identifying potential security risks associated with the application and its traffic. 3. Researching and understanding the capabilities of the security platform checkpoint R81, 20 in this case, to address these risks. 4. Engaging with application owners to gather necessary information and validate assumptions. 5. Developing and testing security policies in a controlled environment. 6. Implementing policies with a clear rollback plan. 7. Continuously monitoring and refining policies based on observed traffic and evolving threats. Question 6. The review process indicates that the checkpoint security gateway R81 20 has flagged a significant volume of outbound traffic from a specific internal server to an unusual external IP address on a non-standard port. The security administrator is concerned about potential data exfiltration or command and control communication. However, the server in question hosts a critical, proprietary application used by a third-party vendor, and any disruption could have severe business consequences. What is the most appropriate course of action for the administrator to take? Option A. Analyze the logs from the checkpoint security gateway to identify the specific security blades that flag the traffic. Examine the nature of the communication protocol, payload if possible, and correlate this with known threat intelligence and the documented function of the internal server and its interaction with the third-party vendor. Based on this analysis, create a specific, narrowly defined exception rule if the traffic is deemed legitimate, or implement appropriate blocking and alerting if it is malicious. Option B. Ignore the flagged traffic, assuming it is a false positive due to the critical nature of the application and the potential for business impact. Option C. Implement a broad, permissive rule allowing all outbound traffic from the internal server to any destination to ensure the application remains fully operational. Option D. Immediately disable the security blade that flagged the outbound traffic to prevent any potential disruption to the critical application and its vendor. Correct answer is A. Analyze the logs from the checkpoint security gateway to identify the specific security blades that flag the traffic. Examine the nature of the communication protocol, payload if possible, and correlate this with known threat intelligence and the documented function of the internal server and its interaction with the third-party vendor. Based on this analysis, create a specific, narrowly defined exception rule if the traffic is deemed legitimate, or implement appropriate blocking and alerting if it is malicious. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of legitimate business processes. The challenge lies in accurately identifying and mitigating threats without inadvertently disrupting critical services. The administrator must possess a deep understanding of both the checkpoint R81 security gateway's capabilities and the specific traffic patterns and business needs of the organization. Misinterpreting traffic or applying overly restrictive policies can lead to significant business impact, while insufficient security can expose the organization to breaches. The professional challenge is to apply security principles judiciously, based on evidence and risk assessment, rather than broad assumptions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a detailed analysis of the suspicious traffic, correlating it with known threat intelligence and the organization's specific application and service requirements. This means examining logs from the checkpoint security gateway, specifically focusing on the suspicious traffic identified. The administrator should investigate the source and destination IPs, ports, protocols, and the specific security blades that flag the traffic. By cross-referencing this information with the organization's asset inventory and understanding the normal behavior of its applications, the administrator can determine if the traffic is indeed malicious or a legitimate, albeit unusual, business communication. If it's legitimate, the next step is to create a specific, narrowly defined policy exception or rule that allows this traffic while maintaining overall security posture. This approach represents best professional practice because it is data-driven, risk-aware, and prioritizes minimizing business disruption while maintaining security. It aligns with the principle of least privilege and the need for context-specific security policy enforcement. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling the security blade that flagged the traffic without further investigation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action bypasses a critical security control, potentially exposing the network to known or emerging threats, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the implications of disabling security features. This approach is professionally unacceptable as it prioritizes expediency over security and lacks any form of risk assessment. Implementing a broad, permissive rule that allows all traffic from the suspicious source IP to any destination is also a critical failure. This creates a gaping security hole, negating the purpose of the security gateway. It is a direct violation of security best practices and likely contravenes internal security policies and potentially regulatory requirements for data protection and network integrity. This approach demonstrates a severe lack of understanding of security policy management and risk. Ignoring the flagged traffic and assuming it is benign without any investigation is another professionally unacceptable approach. This passive stance leaves the organization vulnerable to potential attacks. It represents a failure to actively monitor and manage the security posture of the network, which is a core responsibility of a security administrator. This inaction could lead to a security incident that could have been prevented with proper investigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the context and impact. The decision-making process should involve 1. Observation and data collection. Thoroughly review logs and alerts from the checkpoint security gateway. 2. Analysis and correlation. Correlate flagged traffic with known threats, application behavior, and business requirements. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the potential impact of the traffic being malicious versus the impact of blocking legitimate traffic. 4. Policy refinement. If the traffic is legitimate, create precise, least privilege rules. If malicious, block or mitigate appropriately. 5. Documentation. Record all findings, decisions, and actions taken for audit and future reference. This systematic approach ensures that security decisions are informed, justified, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory compliance. Question 7. The analysis reveals that a company is implementing a new data classification scheme and needs to update its checkpoint security gateway R81. 20 policies to enforce access controls based on these classifications. The security administrator must ensure that only authorized personnel can access highly sensitive data, while maintaining efficient access for less sensitive information. The administrator is considering several methods to achieve this. Option A. Create a new access control policy that grants broad access to all data classifications, and then individually create exceptions for specific users who are explicitly denied access to highly sensitive data. Option B. Implement a new access control policy that uses security tags to define access rules based on the data classification, and deploy this policy after a comprehensive review and testing in a staging environment. Option C. Immediately create and deploy a broad access control policy that denies all access to any data classified as highly sensitive, without specific exceptions for authorized roles. Option D. Configure the security gateway to log all access attempts to sensitive data, but do not implement any new access control rules, relying solely on monitoring for potential breaches. The correct answer is B. Implement a new access control policy that uses security tags to define access rules based on the data classification, and deploy this policy after a comprehensive review and testing in a staging environment. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a security administrator is tasked with implementing a new security policy that impacts user access to sensitive data. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of the business and ensuring compliance with relevant regulations. This requires a deep understanding of the checkpoint security gateway R81, 20 functionalities, specifically in the context of access control and policy management, while also considering the implications of data privacy and security as mandated by general IT security best practices and potentially applicable, though not explicitly stated for this exam, broad data protection principles. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of the new access control policy, starting with a pilot group and thorough testing in a non-production environment. This allows for the identification and remediation of any unintended consequences or operational disruptions before a full rollout. It also ensures that the policy effectively meets the security objectives without unduly hindering legitimate user access. This methodical approach aligns with the principle of least privilege and the need for due diligence in security deployments, which are foundational to maintaining a secure and compliant environment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately deploy the new policy across the entire organization without prior testing or a pilot phase. This could lead to widespread operational disruption, impacting productivity and potentially causing business downtime. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, such a hasty deployment could be seen as negligent, failing to adequately assess risks and potential impacts on data access and user functionality. Another incorrect approach would be to implement the policy with overly restrictive access controls that significantly impede legitimate business operations, even if technically secure. This would violate the principle of proportionality and could lead to workarounds that bypass security controls, ultimately weakening the overall security posture. Furthermore, failing to document the policy changes and their rationale, or to provide adequate user training represents a failure in communication and governance, which are critical for effective security management and user adoption. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the business requirements and the specific security objectives. This is followed by a thorough risk assessment, considering both technical vulnerabilities and operational impacts. The implementation plan should be iterative, incorporating testing, feedback, and adjustments. Clear communication with stakeholders, including end users and management, is paramount throughout the process. Adherence to established security frameworks and best practices, such as those implicitly supported by the CCSA certification, guides decision-making towards solutions that are both secure and practical. Question 8. The assessment process reveals a consistent stream of IPS alerts indicating potential malicious activity originating from a specific external IP address that is critical for a newly deployed business application. The administrator needs to address these alerts without disrupting the application's functionality. Option A. Implement a broad, permissive rule in the firewall policy that bypasses all security checks for any traffic originating from the identified external IP address. Option B. Log the alerts and continue with routine administrative tasks, assuming the IPS is generating false positives due to the new application. Option C. Update the IPS security policy to create a specific rule that allows the necessary traffic from the identified external IP address to reach the application server, while ensuring other security blades remain active. Option D. Temporarily disable the IPS security blade on the affected network segment to stop the alerts and allow the application to function without interruption. Correct answer is C. Update the IPS security policy to create a specific rule that allows the necessary traffic from the identified external IP address to reach the application server, while ensuring other security blades remain active. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of legitimate network traffic. The administrator must interpret and apply security policy effectively, ensuring that the chosen solution addresses the identified threat without introducing new vulnerabilities or hindering essential business functions. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the traffic anomaly and selecting the most appropriate and least disruptive mitigation strategy, all while adhering to established security best practices and potentially internal compliance guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a methodical investigation to understand the nature of the anomalous traffic. This includes analyzing traffic patterns, source and destination IPs, ports, and protocols. If the traffic is identified as legitimate but unusual, e.g., a new application deployment, a scheduled backup to an external service, the appropriate action is to update the security policy to explicitly permit this traffic. This demonstrates best professional practice by addressing the root cause of the alert, ensuring that critical business operations are not inadvertently blocked, and maintaining the integrity of the security posture. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and the need for a well-defined and maintained security policy, which is fundamental to checkpoint administration. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling the IPS security blade entirely is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It represents a complete abdication of responsibility for protecting the network from known threats. This action directly violates the core purpose of implementing an intrusion prevention system and would likely contravene internal security policies and potentially industry-specific compliance mandates that require active threat mitigation. Implementing a broad, permissive rule that allows all traffic from the identified source IP to bypass all security checks is also a severe failure. This creates a gaping security hole, effectively nullifying the security controls for that specific source. It is a reactive and dangerous approach that prioritizes convenience over security, opening the network to a wide range of potential attacks from that source, which is a direct violation of the principle of defense in depth and secure network design. Ignoring the alert and continuing with daily tasks is a failure to perform due diligence. Security alerts are indicators of potential compromise or misconfiguration. Ignoring them means a failure to investigate and mitigate potential risks, which can lead to security breaches, data loss, and reputational damage. This passive approach is professionally negligent and can have severe consequences, including regulatory penalties if a breach occurs due to inaction. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach security alerts with a structured, investigative mindset. The process begins with understanding the alert's context, gathering relevant logs and data, and performing a root cause analysis. Based on the findings, the administrator should then determine the most appropriate action, prioritizing security while minimizing operational impact. This involves consulting security policies, understanding the business impact of potential actions, and documenting all decisions and their justifications. In situations like this, a tiered approach to policy modification, starting with the most specific and least permissive rule that addresses the issue, is always preferred over broad, indiscriminate changes. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the checkpoint security gateway is experiencing significant performance degradation, leading to slow network speeds for the sales team. Initial reports suggest high CPU utilization on the gateway. The sales team is concerned that security policies might be overly aggressive and impacting their ability to access critical business applications and transfer large files. As a CCSA R81 administrator, what is the most appropriate initial course of action to diagnose and resolve this issue? Option A. Make broad, undocumented changes to the firewall access control lists to allow more traffic through the gateway, hoping to alleviate the performance bottleneck. Option B. Analyze the security gateway's logs and reporting features within Smart Console to identify specific traffic patterns, policy rule hits, or security features contributing to the high CPU utilization. Option C. Immediately disable the intrusion prevention system, IPS, and anti-bot blades to reduce the load on the security gateway and improve network performance. Option D. Inform the sales team that security policies cannot be compromised for performance and suggest they optimize their file transfer methods. Correct answer is B. Analyze the security gateway's logs and reporting features within Smart Console to identify specific traffic patterns, policy rule hits, or security features contributing to the high CPU utilization. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of legitimate network traffic. Stakeholder feedback, particularly from the sales team, highlights a potential conflict between security policy enforcement and business enablement. The challenge lies in identifying and addressing the root cause of the performance degradation without compromising the security posture, especially given the sensitive nature of the data being transmitted. The CCSA R81 framework emphasizes a structured, evidence-based approach to security management, requiring administrators to move beyond assumptions and investigate thoroughly. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation using the checkpoint security gateway's logging and reporting capabilities. Specifically, leveraging the Smart Console logs to analyze traffic patterns, identify the source of the high CPU utilization, and correlate it with specific security policies or features is paramount. This aligns with the CCSA R81 curriculum's focus on practical troubleshooting and log analysis for security event management. By examining logs for excessive traffic, specific connection attempts, or policy rule hits that consume significant resources, the administrator can pinpoint the exact cause. This evidence-based method ensures that any remediation actions are targeted, effective, and do not introduce new vulnerabilities. It also allows for informed decision-making regarding policy adjustments, ensuring compliance with security best practices, and the implicit requirement to maintain network availability for business operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling security features without proper investigation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. For instance, indiscriminately disabling IPS or anti-bot blades to alleviate performance issues without understanding the specific traffic triggering the high CPU leaves the network exposed to threats that these blades are designed to prevent. This directly violates the principle of maintaining a secure environment, a core tenet of security administration. Similarly, making broad, undocumented changes to firewall rules without a clear understanding of their impact on traffic flow and security posture is unprofessional and risky. Such actions can inadvertently create security gaps or disrupt legitimate business operations, leading to potential data breaches or compliance violations. Furthermore, relying solely on anecdotal evidence from stakeholders without technical verification demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can lead to misdiagnosis and ineffective solutions, potentially exacerbating the problem or introducing new risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. First, gather detailed information from stakeholders about the observed performance issues, including when they started and what specific applications or services are affected. Second, utilize the Checkpoint Security Gateway's diagnostic tools and logging features, e.g., Smart Console Logs, CPStat FW Monitor, to collect real-time data on system performance and network traffic. Third, analyze this data to identify patterns, anomalies, and potential causes for the high CPU utilization. Fourth, formulate hypotheses based on the analysis and test them systematically, ideally in a controlled manner or by making targeted documented changes. Fifth, implement solutions that address the root cause while minimizing security risks and operational impact. Finally, document all findings, actions taken, and their outcomes, and communicate effectively with stakeholders. This process ensures that security is maintained, operational efficiency is restored, and accountability is upheld. Question 10. During the evaluation of a new web server deployment within an existing Checkpoint R81, 20 managed network, an administrator needs to ensure that traffic to and from this server is properly secured and inspected according to organizational policy. The server will host sensitive customer data and requires specific access controls and threat prevention measures. The administrator has access to the Checkpoint Security Management Server. Which of the following actions best ensures that the new web server is adequately protected by the Checkpoint Security Policy? Option A. Add the new web server's IP address to an existing, less restrictive rule that already permits general web traffic. Option B. Manually configure firewall rules directly on the new web server's operating system to control inbound and outbound traffic. Option C. Create a new security gateway object representing the web server and assign it to the relevant security policy rules that define its traffic and security requirements. Option D. Configure a broad, permissive rule at the top of the security policy to allow all traffic to and from the new web server, assuming other security layers will handle protection. The correct answer is C. Create a new security gateway object representing the web server and assign it to the relevant security policy rules that define its traffic and security requirements. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of legitimate network traffic. The CCSA certification, aligned with Checkpoint R81, 20, emphasizes practical application of security principles within a defined operational context. This question probes the administrator's understanding of how to effectively manage security policies, specifically focusing on the application of security gateway objects and their implications for traffic inspection and enforcement. The correct approach demonstrates a deep understanding of Checkpoint's policy enforcement mechanism. By creating a dedicated security gateway object for the new server and assigning it to the relevant security policy, the administrator ensures that traffic to and from this server is subject to the intended security controls. This granular approach allows for precise policy definition and enforcement, minimizing the risk of misconfiguration or unintended security gaps. It aligns with best practices for network segmentation and access control, ensuring that security policies are applied contextually and effectively. An incorrect approach might involve applying a broad, less specific rule that inadvertently grants excessive access or fails to enforce necessary security measures. This could lead to security vulnerabilities, such as allowing unauthorized access or failing to inspect critical traffic. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, such an approach could be considered negligent, as it fails to uphold the duty of care to protect the organization's network and data. It might also violate internal security policies or industry best practices that mandate specific security controls for new deployments. Another incorrect approach might be to simply add the new server's IP address to an existing, less restrictive rule. This bypasses the opportunity to apply tailored security policies and could expose the new server to unnecessary risks or allow it to communicate in ways that are not aligned with its intended function and security posture. This demonstrates a lack of diligence in security policy management and could lead to compliance issues if specific security requirements for the new server are not met. The professional reasoning process should involve a thorough understanding of the network architecture, the security requirements of the new server, and the capabilities of the checkpoint security management system. Administrators should always strive for the most granular and specific policy configurations possible to ensure effective security. This involves understanding the implications of object creation, policy rule ordering, and the impact of different rule configurations on traffic flow and security enforcement. When in doubt, consulting documentation, seeking peer review, or escalating to senior security personnel are crucial steps in ensuring a secure and compliant deployment. Question 11. The efficiency study reveals that the current security policy configuration on checkpoint R81 20 is leading to increased latency for critical internal application servers. To address this, which of the following actions would best balance security requirements with operational efficiency while adhering to best practices for network security administration? Option A. Implement a deny by default policy, but create very broad allow rules for all internal traffic to ensure seamless connectivity and avoid operational disruptions. Option B. Analyze traffic logs to identify specific, non-essential communication flows and create more granular allow rules for only the necessary services and protocols between internal segments. Option C. Disable security logging for the network segments experiencing high traffic to reduce the load on the logging infrastructure and improve firewall performance. Option D. Broadly permit all traffic originating from trusted internal network segments to all application servers to reduce the processing overhead on the firewall. The correct answer is B. Analyze traffic logs to identify specific, non-essential communication flows and create more granular allow rules for only the necessary services and protocols between internal segments. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a need to optimize the deployment of security policies within a checkpoint R81 20 environment. The challenge lies in balancing the principle of least privilege with the operational demands of a dynamic network. Administrators must ensure that security policies are not overly restrictive, hindering legitimate business functions, nor too permissive, creating vulnerabilities. This scenario is professionally challenging because misconfigurations can lead to significant security breaches or operational disruptions, both of which have direct compliance implications. The correct approach involves a systematic review and refinement of existing security policies, focusing on granular access control and the principle of least privilege. This aligns with best practices for network security administration and implicitly supports regulatory frameworks that mandate robust access controls and risk mitigation. By analyzing traffic logs and identifying specific communication flows that are permitted but not strictly necessary, administrators can create more precise rules. This proactive and data-driven approach minimizes the attack surface and ensures that only essential traffic is allowed, thereby enhancing security posture and demonstrating due diligence in policy management. An incorrect approach would be to broadly permit traffic from trusted internal networks to all servers without specific justification. This violates the principle of least privilege, as it grants access beyond what is strictly required for specific services or applications. From a regulatory perspective, this could be seen as a failure to implement adequate access controls, potentially leading to unauthorized access and data breaches, which are often reportable incidents under various data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach is to disable security logging for specific, high-traffic network segments to improve performance. While performance is a consideration, disabling logging fundamentally undermines the ability to detect, investigate, and respond to security incidents. This directly contravenes regulatory requirements for audit trails and incident response capabilities, making it impossible to demonstrate compliance or to effectively manage security risks. A third incorrect approach is to implement a deny by default policy, but then create overly broad allow rules to compensate for perceived operational inconvenience without proper justification or review. This negates the security benefit of deny by default and creates a false sense of security. It fails to meet the standard of reasonable security measures expected under compliance frameworks, as it does not adequately protect against emerging threats or insider misuse. The professional decision-making process should involve a continuous cycle of policy review, analysis of security logs, and risk assessment. When faced with a need for policy adjustment, administrators should always prioritize the principle of least privilege. Any proposed changes should be documented, justified based on business needs, and tested in a controlled environment before full deployment. The impact on security posture and compliance must be a primary consideration throughout this process. Question 12. Process analysis reveals that a checkpoint security gateway's intrusion prevention system, IPS, is generating a high volume of alerts for traffic originating from a specific internal subnet, causing legitimate business application communication to be intermittently blocked. As the administrator responsible for the security policy, what is the most appropriate and professional course of action to address this situation? Option A. Ignore the IPS alerts and continue monitoring network performance, assuming the alerts are benign and will resolve themselves over time. Option B. Investigate the specific IPS logs and threat signatures associated with the alerts to understand the nature of the detected threats and the traffic patterns. Based on this analysis, either create a targeted exception for legitimate traffic or update the IPS signature if it is prone to false positives, ensuring continued protection against other threats. Option C. Immediately disable the entire IPS blade on the security gateway to stop the disruptive alerts and allow all traffic to flow freely, thereby resolving the immediate communication issues. Option D. Implement a broad exception rule for all traffic originating from the affected internal subnet to bypass IPS inspection, thereby ensuring uninterrupted communication for all applications within that subnet. The correct answer is B. Investigate the specific IPS logs and threat signatures associated with the alerts to understand the nature of the detected threats and the traffic patterns. Based on this analysis, either create a targeted exception for legitimate traffic or update the IPS signature if it is prone to false positives, ensuring continued protection against other threats. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of legitimate network traffic. The administrator must interpret and apply security policy effectively, ensuring that the checkpoint security gateway's intrusion prevention system, IPS, blades are configured to protect against threats without inadvertently blocking critical business functions. The professional challenge lies in understanding the nuances of IPS policy, threat signatures, and the potential impact of configuration changes on network availability and performance, all within the context of maintaining compliance with security best practices and potentially internal organizational policies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based method for addressing the IPS alerts. This begins with a thorough review of the specific IPS logs and threat signatures associated with the alerts. Understanding the nature of the detected threat, e.g., known exploit, suspicious behavior, policy violation, is paramount. Next, investigating the source and destination of the traffic triggering the alerts helps determine if it is legitimate business traffic or malicious activity. If the traffic is identified as legitimate, the administrator must then evaluate the specific IPS signature, rather than disabling the entire IPS blade, which would create a significant security gap. The best practice is to fine-tune the policy. This might involve creating an exception for the specific source/destination, IP addresses, or ports if the traffic is deemed safe, or updating the IPS signature if it is known to generate false positives for legitimate applications. This approach ensures that security remains strong while minimizing disruption to operations, aligning with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. Incorrect approach is analysis. Disabling the entire IPS blade is a critically flawed approach. This action would remove all IPS protection, leaving the network vulnerable to a wide range of threats that the IPS is designed to detect and prevent. This directly violates the fundamental security objectives of deploying an IPS and would be considered a severe lapse in professional responsibility and potentially a breach of organizational security policies. Creating a broad exception for all traffic originating from the affected subnet without a detailed analysis of the specific alerts is also problematic. While it might resolve the immediate issue of blocked traffic, it significantly weakens security by allowing potentially malicious traffic from that subnet to bypass IPS inspection. This approach fails to differentiate between legitimate and malicious activity, creating a security hole. Ignoring the alerts altogether is the most negligent approach. This demonstrates a failure to monitor and respond to potential security incidents. Unaddressed alerts could indicate active exploitation or ongoing reconnaissance, and ignoring them allows threats to persist and potentially escalate, leading to data breaches or system compromise. This is a direct failure to uphold professional security duties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach IPS alerts with a structured methodology. First, always prioritize understanding the alert. What threat is being detected and what is the confidence level of the detection? Second, investigate the context. Who is communicating? What ports and protocols are being used, and is this expected traffic? Third, consult resources. Review checkpoint documentation for the specific IPS signatures, search for known false positives, and understand the implications of disabling or modifying specific protections. Fourth, implement targeted solutions. If traffic is legitimate, consider creating specific exceptions or updating signatures. If the traffic is malicious, block it decisively. Always document all actions taken and the rationale behind them. This systematic process ensures that security is maintained effectively and efficiently, minimizing risk and operational impact. Question 13. Regulatory review indicates that a checkpoint security gateway R81 20 is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting critical business applications. The administrator suspects a specific security blade or policy rule is causing the bottleneck. What is the most appropriate and compliant course of action to diagnose and resolve this issue? Option A. Temporarily disable the intrusion prevention blade and the anti-bot blade to see if performance improves, and re-enable them later if the issue is resolved. Option B. Reboot the security gateway hardware and restart all associated services without first analyzing traffic logs or policy configurations. Option C. Utilize Smart Console to analyze traffic logs and identify the specific security policy rules and blades that are being hit by the traffic exhibiting performance issues. Then refine the policy or rule configuration based on this analysis. Option D. Implement a broad. Allow all rule at the top of the security policy to immediately alleviate any potential blocking or inspection that might be causing the performance impact. The correct answer is C. Utilize Smart Console to analyze traffic logs and identify the specific security policy rules and blades that are being hit by the traffic exhibiting performance issues. Then refine the policy or rule configuration based on this analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of a dynamic business environment. The administrator must interpret and apply security policies in a way that mitigates risk without unduly hindering legitimate business activities. The core challenge lies in understanding the nuances of the checkpoint security gateway's functionalities and how they align with the organization's security posture and compliance obligations, specifically within the context of the R81 20 framework. The pressure to quickly resolve a perceived performance issue while ensuring no security gaps are introduced requires a methodical and informed approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation using the Checkpoint Security Management Server and Smart Console to analyze the traffic logs and identify the specific security policy rules that are being hit by the traffic causing the performance impact. This aligns with best professional practice by prioritizing data-driven decision-making. By examining the logs, the administrator can determine if the traffic is being legitimately blocked, inspected, or if there's an unexpected behavior in rule processing. This allows for targeted adjustments to the security policy, such as optimizing rule order, refining match criteria, or implementing more efficient inspection methods, rather than making broad, potentially insecure changes. This approach directly supports the principle of least privilege and ensures that security controls remain effective while addressing performance concerns. It also adheres to the implicit regulatory requirement of maintaining an auditable and effective security posture, as log analysis provides a clear trail of actions and their justifications. Incorrect approaches analysis. Disabling specific security blades without thorough analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action bypasses security controls without understanding the nature of the traffic or the potential risks. It creates immediate security vulnerabilities, violating the fundamental principle of maintaining a secure network perimeter. Such an action would likely contravene organizational security policies and potentially regulatory mandates requiring due diligence in security management. Implementing a broad, Allow all rule at the top of the policy, even temporarily, is another critical failure. This action completely negates the purpose of the firewall and security gateway, exposing the network to all forms of malicious traffic. It represents a gross negligence in security administration and a direct violation of any compliance framework that mandates network segmentation and access control. Modifying the security gateway's hardware configuration or rebooting without understanding the software-level policy implications is also problematic. While hardware issues can cause performance problems, assuming a hardware fault without exhausting software-based troubleshooting steps is inefficient and potentially introduces new risks. If the reboot disrupts critical security functions or stateful inspection, it bypasses the structured troubleshooting methodology expected of a certified administrator. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach performance issues on a checkpoint security gateway by first leveraging the management tools provided by the vendor. The decision-making process should begin with log analysis to understand traffic patterns and rule interactions. If logs indicate a specific policy is causing the bottleneck, the next step is to analyze that rule's configuration and its impact. Optimization of the rule set, including order and specificity, should be considered before any blade is disabled or a broad allow rule is implemented. If software-level troubleshooting fails to identify the root cause, then hardware diagnostics and potential reboots can be considered, but only after careful planning and understanding of the potential security implications. This methodical, data-driven approach ensures that security is maintained, while operational issues are resolved effectively and compliantly. Question 14. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical security policy on a checkpoint R81 20 security gateway is generating a high volume of alerts and is suspected by some users of impeding legitimate business operations. The administrator is under pressure to resolve this quickly. What is the most professional and secure approach to address this situation? Option A. Immediately disable the security policy to restore normal operations and investigate the alerts later. Option B. Analyze the security gateway logs and traffic reports related to the policy to identify the specific traffic patterns and sources causing the alerts, and then develop a targeted modification or exception based on this data. Option C. Create a broad exception for all traffic to bypass this policy while a full investigation is conducted. Option D. Implement a new, less restrictive security policy based on user complaints without verifying the impact of the current policy through log analysis. The correct answer is A. Immediately disable the security policy to restore normal operations and investigate the alerts later. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of a dynamic business environment. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that security policies, particularly those related to access control and threat prevention, remain effective without unduly hindering legitimate user activity or business processes. The administrator must navigate potential conflicts between security posture and business continuity, requiring a nuanced understanding of both the checkpoint R81 20 functionalities and the organization's specific risk appetite and operational needs. The pressure to quickly resolve a perceived security gap while avoiding disruption adds to the professional challenge. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based methodology. It prioritizes understanding the actual impact and necessity of the existing security policy before making changes. This aligns with best practices in security management, which emphasize a risk-based approach. By first analyzing the logs and traffic patterns associated with the policy, the administrator can determine if the policy is indeed causing legitimate business disruption or if it is effectively blocking malicious activity. If the policy is found to be overly restrictive or misconfigured, the next step is to develop a targeted modification, such as creating an exception or adjusting the rule's parameters based on the gathered evidence. This modification should then be thoroughly tested in a controlled environment before being deployed to production. This process ensures that security remains strong while minimizing negative impacts, adhering to the principle of least privilege and the need for justified security measures. This methodical approach is crucial for maintaining compliance with security frameworks that require demonstrable effectiveness and proportionality of controls. Incorrect approach is analysis. Disabling the security policy entirely without thorough analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly contravenes the fundamental purpose of security controls, which is to protect the organization's assets and data. This action bypasses established security protocols and introduces a high risk of unauthorized access, data breaches, and system compromise. From a compliance perspective, such an action would likely violate numerous security standards and regulations that mandate the implementation and maintenance of effective security measures. It demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a failure to uphold the duty of care owed to the organization and its stakeholders. Implementing a broad, overly permissive exception without understanding the specific traffic or users that need access is also a failure. This approach undermines the security posture by creating unnecessary vulnerabilities. It is akin to leaving a door unlocked to prevent a perceived inconvenience. This broad exception increases the attack surface and could inadvertently allow malicious traffic to pass through, leading to security incidents. Ethically, it represents a failure to apply due diligence in security management, potentially exposing the organization to risks that could have been mitigated with a more precise and targeted solution. Making changes based on anecdotal user complaints without verifying the impact through log analysis or traffic monitoring is another failure. While user feedback is important, security decisions must be data-driven. Relying solely on complaints can lead to misinformed decisions that either weaken security unnecessarily or fail to address the root cause of the problem. This approach lacks the rigor required for effective security management and can lead to a reactive rather than proactive security posture, increasing the likelihood of security incidents. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a structured decision-making process. This begins with understanding the business context and the potential impact of security policies. When faced with a reported issue, the first step is always data collection and analysis. This involves reviewing logs, traffic data, and system performance metrics to understand the nature and scope of the problem. Based on this analysis, a hypothesis can be formed about the cause and potential solutions. Proposed changes should be evaluated against security best practices and organizational risk tolerance. Any modifications should be implemented with a clear rollback plan and tested rigorously. Documentation of the entire process, including the rationale for changes and the results of testing, is essential for accountability and future reference. This systematic approach ensures that security decisions are informed, effective, and justifiable. Question 15. The assessment process reveals a critical zero-day vulnerability affecting a core network service. The security team has identified a vendor-provided patch that addresses the vulnerability. However, the organization relies heavily on this service for its daily operations, and a recent, unrelated patch caused significant downtime for a similar service. The administrator must decide on the most appropriate course of action to mitigate the vulnerability while minimizing operational risk. Option A. Implement the patch immediately across all affected systems to ensure maximum protection against the zero-day exploit. Option B. Apply the patch only to non-critical systems and monitor their performance, leaving critical systems unprotected until further notice. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and impact analysis of the patch, followed by a phased deployment starting with a test environment, then to a limited set of production systems before a full rollout. Option D. Delay the patch deployment until the next scheduled maintenance window to avoid any potential disruption to current operations. The correct answer is A. Implement the patch immediately across all affected systems to ensure maximum protection against the zero-day exploit. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical juncture in network security management where a newly discovered vulnerability requires immediate action. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of patching with the potential disruption to critical business operations, all while adhering to established security policies and regulatory compliance. This scenario demands a nuanced approach that prioritizes risk mitigation without causing undue operational impact. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment and phased deployment strategy. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that security updates are applied effectively and efficiently. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to robust security architectures. By first testing the patch in a controlled environment, the administrator can validate its efficacy and identify any unintended consequences before widespread deployment. This proactive measure minimizes the risk of service outages, thereby safeguarding business continuity and maintaining compliance with any service-level agreements, SLAs, or operational requirements. This methodical approach is professionally sound as it demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to maintaining a secure yet functional network environment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately deploy the patch across all systems without prior testing. This bypasses essential validation steps, increasing the likelihood of introducing instability or compatibility issues that could lead to significant downtime. Such an action would represent a failure to adequately assess risk and could violate internal change management policies and potentially regulatory requirements related to operational stability and data availability. Another incorrect approach is to delay the patch deployment indefinitely due to fear of disruption. While operational continuity is important, neglecting critical security vulnerabilities exposes the organization to significant risks, including data breaches and system compromise. This inaction constitutes a failure to uphold the administrator's responsibility to protect the network and its assets, potentially leading to severe regulatory penalties and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach is to deploy the patch only to a subset of non-critical systems. While this might seem like a compromise, it leaves critical systems vulnerable and does not fully address the identified threat. Selective patching demonstrates an incomplete understanding of the overall threat landscape and fails to provide comprehensive protection, which is a core tenet of professional security administration. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's risk tolerance, critical assets, and operational dependencies. A structured incident response plan, including a well-defined change management process, is essential. This process should mandate risk assessment, impact analysis, testing, phased deployment, and post-deployment verification for all security-related changes. Question 16. Implementation of a new mandatory multi-factor authentication (MFA) policy for accessing all internal business applications is required to address recent security audit findings. The policy dictates that all users must enroll and use MFA for every login. The IT security team has developed the technical configuration for the MFA solution. What is the most professional and compliant approach to deploy this new policy? Option A. Implement the MFA policy by enabling it for all users simultaneously but provide a grace period of 1 month for enrollment, during which users can still log in without MFA, and then enforce it strictly. Option B. Conduct a pilot deployment of the MFA policy to a select group of users from different departments for a 2-week period, gather feedback, address any issues, and then proceed with a phased rollout to the entire organization with clear communication and training materials provided to all users beforehand. Option C. Deploy the MFA policy only to the IT department first, as they are technically proficient and can manage any immediate issues, and then consider expanding it to other departments later. Option D. Immediately enforce the MFA policy across all users and applications, disabling access for anyone who has not enrolled within 24 hours to ensure rapid compliance with the security audit findings. The correct answer is B. Conduct a pilot deployment of the MFA policy to a select group of users from different departments for a 2-week period, gather feedback, address any issues, and then proceed with a phased rollout to the entire organization with clear communication and training materials provided to all users beforehand. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of a business. The administrator must implement a new security policy that impacts user access to critical business applications. The challenge lies in ensuring the policy is effective in mitigating identified risks without causing undue disruption to business operations or violating any relevant regulatory mandates. The pressure to deploy quickly, coupled with potential user pushback, requires a methodical and compliant approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation strategy that includes thorough testing and user communication. This aligns with best practices for change management and security policy deployment. Specifically, it emphasizes a pilot deployment to a limited group of users to identify and resolve any unforeseen issues before a full rollout. This proactive testing minimizes the risk of widespread service disruption. Furthermore, clear and timely communication with affected users about the policy's purpose, impact, and any necessary actions on their part is crucial for user adoption and compliance. This approach demonstrates due diligence in security implementation and respects the operational needs of the organization, ensuring that security measures are both effective and practical. It also implicitly supports the principle of least privilege, a core tenet of security frameworks, by ensuring access is granted only when necessary and appropriately secured. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the policy immediately across the entire organization without prior testing or user notification is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the potential for unintended consequences, such as widespread application unavailability, which could lead to business losses and non-compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs, or other operational mandates. It also fails to uphold the principle of user awareness and training, which is often a requirement in security frameworks to ensure effective policy adherence. Deploying the policy only to a small, non-critical department without considering the broader impact on other business units is also problematic. While it might seem like a cautious first step, it fails to adequately assess the policy's effectiveness and potential conflicts with other critical systems or user groups. This incomplete testing can lead to a false sense of security and may still result in unexpected disruptions when the policy is eventually expanded. It also doesn't address the need for comprehensive user communication across the organization. Focusing solely on the technical implementation of the policy without considering user impact or potential workarounds is another failure. Security policies are only effective if they are understood and followed by users. Ignoring the human element can lead to users attempting to bypass security controls, thereby undermining the policy's intent and potentially creating new vulnerabilities. This approach neglects the importance of user education and support, which are often implicit or explicit requirements for successful security program implementation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach security policy implementation with a structured, risk-based methodology. This involves understanding the threat landscape, defining clear security objectives, and then designing controls that meet those objectives while minimizing operational impact. A critical step is to engage stakeholders, including end users and business unit managers, early in the process to gather input and manage expectations. A phased rollout, including pilot testing and comprehensive communication plans, is a standard best practice for managing change and ensuring successful adoption of new security measures. This approach demonstrates a commitment to both security effectiveness and business continuity, adhering to principles of responsible IT governance. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a high-severity vulnerability associated with a specific application protocol being exploited by traffic originating from a broad IP address range. The application is critical for internal data processing, and blocking the entire IP range would severely disrupt business operations. As a checkpoint, Certified Security Administrator for R81. 20. What is the most appropriate action to mitigate this risk while minimizing operational impact? Option A. Escalate the issue to senior management and await further instructions without implementing any immediate security controls. Option B. Enable all available threat prevention blades on the checkpoint gateway at their default settings and monitor logs for any suspicious activity. Option C. Block all inbound traffic originating from the entire IP address range identified in the risk matrix to eliminate the threat immediately. Option D. Implement a highly specific application control policy to permit only the legitimate traffic for the critical application, while simultaneously configuring intrusion prevention system, IPS, and anti-bot blades to detect and block malicious patterns associated with the identified exploit within the permitted traffic. The correct answer is D. Implement a highly specific application control policy to permit only the legitimate traffic for the critical application, while simultaneously configuring intrusion prevention system, IPS, and anti-bot blades to detect and block malicious patterns associated with the identified exploit within the permitted traffic. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of business applications. The risk matrix highlights a critical vulnerability in a system that, if exploited, could lead to significant data breaches and operational disruption. The CCSA role is to implement effective security measures while ensuring minimal impact on legitimate business functions. This requires a deep understanding of Checkpoint R81, 20 capabilities, and the specific regulatory environment governing data protection and network security. The correct approach involves a layered security strategy that leverages the advanced features of Checkpoint R81, 20 to mitigate the identified risk without completely blocking legitimate traffic. This includes implementing granular access control policies, utilizing threat prevention blades like IPS and antibot, and potentially employing application control to allow specific, necessary application traffic while blocking malicious or unauthorized usage. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to effective security posture management, and are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate reasonable security measures to protect sensitive data. The CCSA must demonstrate the ability to configure these features precisely to address the specific threat identified in the risk matrix. An incorrect approach would be to simply block all traffic from the identified source IP address range. While this would immediately eliminate the risk from that specific source, it fails to address the underlying vulnerability and could disrupt legitimate business operations if valid users or services are operating within that range. This broad-stroke approach lacks the precision required for effective security management and could lead to operational downtime, impacting business continuity and potentially violating service-level agreements. From a regulatory perspective, while security is mandated, overly restrictive measures that cripple business operations without a clear, proportionate risk assessment can be challenged. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the risk matrix entry, assuming the threat is low or unlikely. This is a direct abdication of responsibility and a failure to adhere to proactive security practices. Regulatory frameworks often require organizations to identify, assess, and mitigate risks. Ignoring a documented risk, especially one highlighted in a formal risk assessment, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and leaves the organization exposed to potential breaches, which can result in severe penalties and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a generic, one-size-fits-all security policy without tailoring it to the specific threat and the environment. For instance, enabling all threat prevention blades at their default settings without tuning them for the specific application and network traffic could lead to excessive false positives, impacting performance and requiring significant administrative overhead to manage. While enabling these blades is a good step, a lack of specific configuration to address the identified risk makes it less effective and potentially disruptive. This highlights a failure to apply a risk-based approach, which is a cornerstone of modern cybersecurity and regulatory compliance. The professional decision-making process for this situation involves a systematic evaluation of the risk, understanding the available security tools and their capabilities within the Checkpoint R81, 20 environment, and considering the operational impact of any proposed solution. The CCSA should consult the risk matrix, analyze the nature of the threat, identify the specific vulnerabilities being exploited, and then configure the checkpoint security gateway to address these precisely. This involves understanding the nuances of policy creation, threat prevention blade configuration, and logging to ensure both security and operational continuity. Question 18. Governance review demonstrates that the intrusion prevention system, IPS, signature update process has been bypassed for the past 72 hours due to an administrative oversight, leaving the network vulnerable to known threats. The security administrator has identified the issue and has the necessary credentials to perform the update. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to address this critical security gap while adhering to established operational procedures? Option A. Immediately initiate the incident response process, document the oversight and its impact, and then proceed with a formal change request for the IPS signature update, ensuring all necessary approvals are obtained before implementation. Option B. Manually update the IPS signatures on the management server and then manually propagate the update to all security gateways to ensure consistent protection. Option C. Directly apply the IPS signature update to all relevant security gateways without any formal documentation or approval, as the urgency of the situation outweighs standard procedures. Option D. Delay the IPS signature update until a comprehensive audit of all security policies and configurations can be completed to ensure no other systemic issues exist. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate the incident response process, document the oversight and its impact, and then proceed with a formal change request for the IPS signature update, ensuring all necessary approvals are obtained before implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration or a critical security control. The intrusion prevention system, IPS, signature update process has been bypassed due to an operational oversight. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to restore security functionality with the requirement to adhere to established change management and incident response procedures. Failure to properly document and approve changes, even those intended to rectify a security gap, can lead to audit failures, compliance violations, and a weakened security posture due to a lack of oversight. Urgency of the situation can tempt administrators to take shortcuts, which is precisely what robust governance frameworks aim to prevent. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately initiating the incident response process, which includes documenting the failure, assessing the impact, and then following the established change management procedures for remediation. This ensures that the fix is applied in a controlled, documented, and approved manner. This aligns with best practices for IT governance and security operations, emphasizing accountability, auditability, and risk management. By following the documented procedures, even under pressure, the administrator demonstrates adherence to organizational policies and regulatory requirements that mandate proper change control and incident handling. This approach ensures that the fix is not only effective, but also integrated into the overall security management framework, preventing future occurrences and maintaining a clear audit trail. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly applying the IPS signature update without any formal documentation or approval. This bypasses the change management process, which is a critical control for preventing unauthorized or poorly implemented changes that could introduce new vulnerabilities or disrupt services. This failure directly violates principles of IT governance and auditability, making it impossible to track the change, its justification, and its impact, which is often a requirement for compliance frameworks. Another incorrect approach is to delay the IPS signature update until a full security review of the entire system is completed. While comprehensive reviews are valuable, this approach fails to address the immediate security risk posed by outdated IPS signatures. The principle of timely remediation of known vulnerabilities is paramount in cybersecurity. Delaying a critical security update due to an overly broad or unprioritized review process creates an unacceptable window of exposure, potentially leading to a security incident. This demonstrates a lack of risk-based prioritization, a core tenet of effective security management. A third incorrect approach is to manually update the IPS signatures on a single management server without propagating the update to all security gateways. This creates an inconsistent security posture across the network. The IPS will not be effectively protecting all segments of the network, leaving other areas vulnerable. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of distributed security systems and the importance of consistent policy enforcement across all deployed security devices, a fundamental requirement for maintaining an effective security perimeter. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this situation by prioritizing immediate threat mitigation, while strictly adhering to established incident response and change management protocols. The decision-making process should involve 1. Incident identification and documentation. Immediately log the issue and its potential impact. 2. Risk assessment. Determine the severity of the outdated signatures and the urgency of the update. 3. Incident response activation. Follow the defined incident response plan, which may include temporary workarounds if applicable and safe. 4. Change request submission. Formally document the proposed solution, IPS signature update, and submit a change request, clearly stating the reason for urgency and the potential risks of inaction. 5. Approval and implementation. Obtain necessary approvals and implement the change following the approved change management plan, ensuring proper testing and verification. 6. Post-implementation review. Conduct a review to confirm the fix's effectiveness and update documentation. This systematic approach ensures that security is maintained, risks are managed, and organizational policies and regulatory requirements are met. Question 19. The audit findings indicate that remote administrative access to critical security management servers is not adequately secured, posing a significant risk of unauthorized access and potential data exfiltration. The current configuration relies on standard user authentication methods without additional layers of verification for administrative privileges. Which of the following approaches best addresses these audit findings and strengthens the security posture for remote administrative access? Option A. Establish a broad VPN access tunnel for all administrators, allowing them to connect to the management network without further restrictions on administrative tasks. Option B. Implement a policy that enforces multi-factor authentication for all administrative access and configure granular access control lists to restrict administrative privileges to necessary functions and specific IP address ranges. Option C. Enhance the existing password policy to require longer and more complex passwords for all administrative accounts. Option D. Mandate that all administrative tasks must be performed from within the organization's physical network perimeter, disabling all remote administrative access. The correct answer is B. Implement a policy that enforces multi-factor authentication for all administrative access and configure granular access control lists to restrict administrative privileges to necessary functions and specific IP address ranges. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The audit findings highlight a critical gap in the organization's security posture concerning the management of sensitive data accessed by remote administrators. The challenge lies in balancing the operational necessity of remote access with the stringent requirements for data protection and compliance. This scenario is professionally challenging because it demands a nuanced understanding of checkpoint R81, 20 capabilities, potential security vulnerabilities, and the implications of inadequate access controls on regulatory adherence. The administrator must not only identify the technical solution, but also justify its implementation within the existing security framework and potential compliance mandates. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a policy that enforces multi-factor authentication, MFA, for all administrative access, coupled with granular access control lists, ACL, that restrict administrative privileges to only necessary functions and specific IP address ranges, represents best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the audit findings by strengthening authentication and minimizing the attack surface for remote administrative access. From a regulatory perspective, this aligns with the principle of least privilege and robust access management, which are foundational to many data protection regulations. Checkpoint R81, 20 Security Gateway and Smart Console provide the necessary tools to configure and enforce these policies effectively, ensuring that only authorized personnel with verified identities can access critical administrative functions, thereby reducing the risk of unauthorized data exposure or system compromise. Incorrect approach is analysis. Allowing administrative access solely based on a strong password policy without MFA fails to meet the evolving security standards and regulatory expectations for protecting sensitive systems. Passwords alone are susceptible to compromise through various means, leaving the organization vulnerable to unauthorized access and potential data breaches. This approach is professionally unacceptable as it ignores the inherent weaknesses of password-based authentication and neglects the principle of defense in depth. Implementing a broad VPN access for all administrators without specific restrictions on the types of administrative tasks they can perform or the data they can access creates an overly permissive environment. This violates the principle of least privilege, cornerstone of secure system administration and a common regulatory requirement. If an administrator's credentials are compromised, the attacker would gain unfettered access to all administrative functions, significantly increasing the risk of a major security incident. Disabling all remote administrative access and requiring on-site presence for all management tasks, while highly secure, is often operationally infeasible in modern IT environments. This approach, while seemingly robust, can lead to significant operational inefficiencies and may not be a practical or sustainable solution. It fails to address the need for flexible and efficient remote management, which is a common business requirement. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such scenarios by first thoroughly understanding the audit findings and their implications. This involves identifying the specific risks associated with the current configuration, Next, they should consult the capabilities of the deployed security solution, in this case, checkpoint R81, 20, to determine feasible technical controls. The chosen solution must align with established security best practices, such as the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, and also consider potential regulatory compliance requirements. A risk-based approach, prioritizing controls that mitigate the most significant threats, is crucial. Finally, the chosen solution should be documented, implemented, and continuously monitored to ensure its effectiveness and ongoing compliance. Question 20. Investigation of unusual network traffic patterns detected on a critical production server, which is suspected to be part of a security incident, requires immediate action. The administrator has identified the server and the suspicious traffic, but is unsure of the exact nature or extent of the compromise. The primary concern is to prevent further damage while minimizing disruption to the business operations that rely on this server. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the security administrator? Option A. Begin patching all known vulnerabilities on the server and all other critical servers without further investigation. Option B. Immediately isolate the server from the network by blocking all inbound and outbound traffic to and from it, and begin a forensic analysis of its logs and system state. Option C. Document the suspicious traffic and wait for further indicators of compromise before taking any action. Option D. Initiate a full network-wide shutdown to prevent any potential lateral movement of the threat until the incident is fully understood. The correct answer is B. Immediately isolate the server from the network by blocking all inbound and outbound traffic to and from it, and begin a forensic analysis of its logs and system state. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security administration, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational requirements of legitimate business processes. The administrator is tasked with investigating a potential security incident, but the investigation itself could disrupt critical services. The professional challenge lies in conducting a thorough and effective investigation without causing undue harm to the organization's operations, reputation, or compliance standing. This requires a nuanced understanding of security best practices, incident response methodologies, and the potential impact of investigative actions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and phased incident response, prioritizing containment and eradication while minimizing disruption. This aligns with standard incident response frameworks, which emphasize understanding the scope of the incident, isolating affected systems, and then proceeding with remediation. By first gathering evidence and understanding the nature of the threat without immediately shutting down all services, the administrator can make informed decisions about the most effective and least disruptive containment strategies. This approach respects the principle of least privilege for investigative actions and aims to preserve the integrity of evidence, crucial for post-incident analysis and potential legal proceedings. It also demonstrates a commitment to business continuity, a key consideration in any security operation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Immediately disabling all network services without a clear understanding of the incident's scope or impact is a premature and overly broad response. This approach fails to consider the potential for significant business disruption, which could lead to financial losses, reputational damage, and a violation of service-level agreements. It also risks destroying or corrupting evidence that might be crucial for understanding the root cause of the incident. Furthermore, such an indiscriminate shutdown might not even effectively contain the threat if the incident is localized or has already spread beyond the initially suspected areas. Focusing solely on patching vulnerabilities without a proper investigation is also problematic. While patching is a critical security measure, it should be informed by an understanding of the specific threat. Patching without knowing the attack vector or the extent of the compromise could be ineffective, time-consuming, and might not address the immediate security risk. It also bypasses the essential steps of incident identification, containment, and eradication, which are paramount during an active security event. Ignoring the incident due to a lack of immediate, obvious impact is a severe dereliction of duty. Security incidents, even those that appear minor initially, can escalate rapidly or be indicative of a more sophisticated, stealthy attack. Failing to investigate could lead to significant data breaches, system compromise, or regulatory noncompliance, with severe consequences for the organization. This approach demonstrates a lack of proactive security posture and a disregard for potential risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should follow a structured incident response plan. This typically involves 1. Preparation, having an incident response plan in place. 2. Identification, detecting and confirming an incident. 3. Containment, limiting the scope and impact of the incident. 4. Eradication, removing the cause of the incident. 5. Recovery, restoring systems to normal operation. 6. Lessons learned, analyzing the incident and improving defenses. In this specific case, the administrator must prioritize containment and evidence preservation. This means gathering as much information as possible about the suspicious activity before taking drastic measures. Decisions about service disruption should be made based on the assessed risk and potential impact, with a preference for targeted containment actions over broad shutdowns. Communication with relevant stakeholders, including management and potentially legal counsel, is also vital throughout the process.